Good morning, church. Last week I said that God is not the God of the 11th hour, but 2 o'clock in the morning. So what do I mean by that? Okay, theologically, what I'm saying is God is not just the God of intervention. He's actually the God of resurrection. Things that have died. Now, when I was in Israel a few years ago, I made friends with someone called Shafik. He was our tour guide. He was a historian and a theologian, and actually used to be part of the Israeli CIA. He was a dude, I tell you, really, really good. Anyway, he asked me a question. He said, why does John 11 record twice that Lazarus had been dead for 4 days? Why? Why 4 days? So, of course, with my Western theology, I said, because he'd been dead 4 days. He'd been dead a long time, and the Bible wanted to show that he'd been dead a long time. Also, it records that his corpse would be smelly. Tropical or subtropical climate. He'd been dead 4 days. Now, Martha and Mary would have been well aware that Jesus had already raised Jairus' daughter from the dead. She'd been dead less than an hour. Also, the widow's son in Nain, he'd probably been dead for a day at the most, because they buried them or put them in tombs quite quickly. So he said, yeah, true, yeah. The Bible is saying that he'd been dead a long time. But why 4 days? He then challenged me and said, you see, if the Bible records something, if it's in the Bible, there's a reason. So again, he said, why 4 days? And the only answer I had was, it's 4 days. So he laughed at me. He said, that's the trouble, you Westerners. You don't understand our culture. He said, okay, it's not biblical, but culturally, they believe that when someone's been dead for 4 days, that's when the spirit has departed. They kind of believe that the spirit hangs around for 3 days. I don't quite get the culture. I'm not Jewish, but I understood that. He said, when the Bible recorded Lazarus had been dead 4 days, when Mary said, if only you'd got here sooner, she'd understood Jesus called the dead back to life. But Lazarus was really dead. Really, really, really dead. His body was stinking. His spirit had departed. But what did Jesus say? Actually, Jesus said, didn't I tell you, says Martha, that if you believe, you will see the glory of God. Also in John 11, Jesus said, I am the resurrection and the life. When Jesus heard that Lazarus was ill, it records in John 11, he decided to stay on in Jerusalem, only about 2 miles away. He decided to stay. Then he turns around to his disciples as they journey back and said, Lazarus has fallen asleep. So they said, well, don't wake him. If he's ill, he needs to rest. Then Jesus says he's dead. Such a short journey. Why the long delay? Okay, he might have been healing other people en route. There's many things that aren't recorded in the Bible that Jesus did. Could have been that. I believe the reason he took 4 days was to show them, whatever your culture, whatever you believe, whatever parameters we put on God, he's greater than all that. He's so much greater. So don't lose heart, brothers and sisters. Don't give up. Don't despair. He is the resurrection and the life. And as Jesus said to Mary and Martha and all those around, didn't I tell you? If you just believe, if you just put your trust in Jesus, you will see the glory of God. So brothers and sisters, hopefully that explains a lot of last week. What did I mean by God is not the God of 11 o'clock at night, but he's the God of 2 o'clock in the morning? He can call back. He can call back into being dead dreams, dead hopes. People who are in despair can take off that garment of mourning and have a garment of joy in its place because of who he is, not because of who we are. Amen. See you Sunday.